Please welcome to the stage actor Billy Porter, writer and director Lulu Wang, and ABC7 Chicago's Val Warner.
Hi, everybody. How you feeling today? How you been having a great day, a good time? Well, I'm so happy to be here with you, and I am super excited to be able to moderate this conversation with two fabulous people, and we're going to get right into it. I want to throw this out to both of you. Let's talk about that one place that set you off on your path to your purpose.
Well, I think for me, it was actually the realization that home didn't have to be one place. Because I grew up in Miami. I was born in Beijing. My parents and I immigrated to Miami, of all places. Totally different when I was 6 years old. And then I never felt like I belonged there. I never felt like I belonged in China when I went back. I went to school in Boston. I live in LA now. So I've never really known really what home was as a place. The only thing I knew was it was a feeling. It was where my family was, and it's both my, family, biological family, but also the family that I've created in my own life.
Right, Billy?
I was bit by the theater bug in the 6th grade in middle school, and I did my research and realized that I could do that in New York City. And so my goal from 11 years old was to get to New York City because I knew that that would be the place that would feel like home to me.
Right. Sometimes we change our true selves to fit in.
Yeah.
But I feel like neither one of you have done that. You have been authentic to your true selves. Billy, why don't you talk to that?
I was not always authentic
to
my true self because I didn't always understand how to do that. When I was in my 20s and had an R&B record deal, and everybody was telling me I was too gay to be in the R&B music industry, I did my best to be as masculine as I possibly could. You can see the music videos. I actually was really good at it. I was good. I'm a good actor.
Yes, you are.
It wasn't authentic.
It wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
No.
And, I made a decision around 1999 into 2000 that I had to walk away from all of the things that were not going to feed me and feed into my authenticity. So I started trying to be authentic then, and as the years went on, that deepened and deepened and deepened, and now I'm where I am now, which is, giving 0 F's about any of it.
Right. Do you remember the day, the time, the place when you decided, you know what, I gotta go. I gotta make this switch. You do.
I do.
Tell us.
So I had a song in the First Wives Club soundtrack called Love Is On The Way. And I had fought for this song. It was a great song. And my album was released in September of '96. And in November of '96, I got a telephone call from a friend of mine who was temping at Sony Music for Tommy Mottola. And he said, I just got Celine Dion's record, and Love Is On The Way is on it. He said, nope, it's on it, and not only is it on it, but the same people who produced it for you produced it for her. And he said, and I listened to it, and it's the exact same thing. Note for note, lick for lick, and I just thought, I'm done. I didn't come here to be a demo singer for Celine Dion. No shade, she's fabulous. But I didn't come here to be a demo singer for her.
Right.
It was the end, it was the last straw of a very long period of mess. quite frankly. And that was the day that I decided, if it's gonna be like this, I don't want it.
Right. Lulu, what about you? Did you ever struggle with fitting in versus being your authentic self?
100%. I think that being a director, wanting to be a director, in many ways, as a storyteller, you know, in this country, when you don't see yourself represented in the media, I was always compromising to some degree without realizing it in an unconscious way. It was never a question of, do I compromise? It was more a question of, how far can I compromise while still keeping my integrity? You know, like, all right, so somebody's gonna tell me if I change this, then they'll finance my movie. Well, I need to get my movie made.
Right.
So how many of those notes can I take while still somewhat keeping the heart of my story intact? And it wasn't until I did this particular story about my family that now is called The Farewell as a film. I actually did a story for This American Life.
Yes.
Because nobody wanted to finance the movie. American producers were like, this is not an American film. It's got Chinese people. It's going to be, you want it to be in Chinese, which means it's subtitled. Like, how is that an American film? Go find a Chinese investor. I talked to a Chinese investor and they said, your main character's perspective is way too Western. No one in China is going to understand where she's coming from. Like, so I ended up not making it as a film at first, and I did the story for This American Life. And in doing the story for This American Life, where I still remember producer Neil Drumming came up to me at a film festival and said, I'm about to start this job as a producer at This American Life. What are the stories that you want to tell that Hollywood is not letting you tell? Give those to me. And no one's ever asked me that before. No one's ever said, like, what is it that you want to say that no one's letting you say? Right. And then I brought the story there, and they said, this happened to you? Tell us more. How did that make you feel? How did your family feel? Instead of wanting to change it, they said, let's investigate, let's dig deeper. And when I sat in that studio, it was my voice into the microphone. I was so emotional because it was the reason why I got into storytelling, that purity of my voice, and knowing that, you know, millions of people were going to then hear my story. And I thought, why am I in Hollywood? Why am I making when Hollywood is never going to let me do what I'm doing right now? You know, having that personal of a connection.
Right.
And that was the moment I said, I'm quitting Hollywood. I'm not going to make films. It's not the right medium for me. I need to go tell more authentic stories. And maybe public radio is the better, you know, format. 48 hours later, you know, of course, producers heard the story on the radio and called me and wanted to make the film.
Right.
But because I had made that decision that I wasn't going to compromise anymore, that's what gave me the power when they called to say, okay, fine, I'll only make it with you under these conditions.
Right. And when you did that and you actually made the pitch and you were in front of all those Hollywood folks and told them about this Asian family, the dying grandmother, and oh yeah, the subtitles, did you get any pushback in that room?
Oh, of course. Like that, like I said, everyone just felt, the first thing they said was, oh great, ethnic wedding, family, it'll be like my big fat Chinese wedding. You know? It's like the Hollywood always has comps, right? But when you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, there are no comps.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like, and it takes risks, and yet you still kind of have to trick them into it. You go, yeah, it's like my big fat Chinese wedding, but a little darker. You know? And for those of you who have seen the movie, right, that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
You know, and you just sort of like finagle, you're like, it's lost in translation, kind of, but she's Asian. You know,
And there's subtitles.
And there's subtitles, but very close. The dad, he's like basically Bill Murray. Yeah, and so I found myself kind of tricking people into the thing, and then, you know?
Yeah, you had to do what you had to do.
Yeah.
That was a very smart way to do that. Billy, you're the first openly gay black man to win an Emmy for a lead role. Come on, y'all, give it up. Lead actor in a drama. Y'all know I'm talking about Pose. Talk about that being a big win for representation.
You know, I have been in this business for 30 years. And the amount of no's that I have received and doors slammed in my face to come out on the other side with this takes my breath away. I came out in 1985 as a gay man. We went right to the front lines to fight for our lives. I never dreamed it could look like this. You know, there was no context for any of this to look like this. Mm-hmm. You know, I always say it's easy to, you know, we talk about authenticity all the time. We throw that word around in our culture. But the reality is, you know, we're authentic when it's convenient. Our authenticity is accepted when it's convenient for the others on the outside to accept it. If it makes somebody else uncomfortable, then it's a problem. It's easy to be who you are when what you are is what's popular. When I chose to be authentic, when everybody said to me, your gayness is your liability. You must butch it up. You must be masculine. The heteronormative idea of and construct of what masculinity means. When I realized I was never going to be able to live up to somebody else's standard of what that meant, I let it go. And when I let it go, the world opened up for me.
But how did you let it go? Because that's
it was many, many, many years. You know, it's practice. It's every day of getting up and recommitting myself to myself.
Right.
You know, It was not easy. You know, there was 13 years of no work for me. There was bankruptcy for me. It looked like it wasn't working.
Right.
For years. It wasn't 2 or 3. It was decades long of nothing, of feeling on the verge of obscurity.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And all of a sudden, one day, I turned around and it was the Revival of Angels in America, which is the play that changed my life and set me on this path in the first place. Because that was the first time I saw myself in anything, anywhere. And then it was Kinky Boots, you know, and then all of a sudden here comes Pose. And it was like, I really, really, truly never dreamed it could look like Pray Tell. And when I tell you this moment in my life, you know, Ryan Murphy, Stephen Canals, you know, Brad Falchuk, the creators of this show, the way that Ryan Murphy, who is in a position of power, because it only takes one person in a position of power who can make the change, right, who can greenlight it and say yes for real, right?
Yes.
Took one person to say that to me. He and his vision have taught me to dream the impossible. My dreams have always been big, but they were always springboarded off of something that I had already seen. I was not dreaming the impossible. Now I know how to do that. And if anybody in this room has any question about that, just look at me. Whatever you think is impossible, dream it anyway.
Wow. Speaking of Pray Tell, you know I have to ask you, speaking of Pray Tell, of course, Pose, set in the 80s, New York's queer, Black and Latino communities. What episode or what scene out of all of them really resonated with you that you can talk about with us here?
Well,
I know there's a lot.
I love a lot of them. Because I can't believe, you know, I get these scripts and I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it. It's like, wow, I get to do all of this?
Yeah.
I have to say all the HIV stuff, just as a blanket statement, all the HIV stuff is really important to me because I lived through it. I lost a lot of friends. You know, we're in a space where, you know, we in America very often like to forget what came before us. You know, we forget our history. So then we're doomed to repeat it. So the fact that I get to tell the story of all my friends who didn't make it,
right,
you know, I get to tell that story and remind the world that we were here. We were here and we meant something. You know, those scenes are always my favorite. Now, episode 6, season 1. Baby, I'm at that dinner table at Blanca's house and I'm drunk and I cuss them out and it is my favorite scene ever. And I have to say, I had never played drunk before. And, you know, I was very nervous and I woke up that morning and to do my research, I watched several scenes from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
So when I walked in, I was like, okay, so you want full Virginia Woolf? Or do you want end of Act 1 Virginia Woolf? You know, like which part of what level of drunk do you want? And they said, well, you know, go all out and we'll see. And literally it was one take.
One take.
One take, and I let them have it. And it's my favorite scene. It truly is my favorite scene.
Oh, that is the best. Lulu, I want to ask you this. In Hollywood, you're identified as a female director or maybe an Asian American director. Which one do you prefer or which one is harder?
You know, I don't think any of them are hard for me necessarily because I am a woman director and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm just a director as well, but I am a woman and that's who I am. It's part of how I see the world, is how the world sees me. I'm Asian American. It's how I see the world, that's how the world sees me. My issue is that men and white men don't get labeled that. So if we're gonna do qualifiers, then let's do it for everybody, you know? And also, because that's how we can actually like talk about this stuff, right? You know, as opposed to the people of color, women feeling somehow like marginalized. You know, when I was talking to somebody where they don't do, no, it was James Beard or I don't know, San Pellegrino, right? Totally different things. But anyways, my brother's a chef. We were talking about this and he said, you know, there's the San Pellegrino Awards and then there's Best Female Chef. And I said, well, is there a Best Male Chef? No. And, you know, and it feels a little bit like we get relegated to this, like, eat your spinach. Like, you may not like, but we got to do this for the sake of, you know, being PC or whatever. And it's like, no, just put more women in the main category. You know, and I got in a massive fight with a friend of mine. We've been friends for a very long time, but we got into a identity politics conversation, and I said, well, you know, you're a white man. You haven't seen that. You don't get. And he goes, I'm not white. I'm not a white man. Don't. You make that sounds terrible. And I said,
I'm the white.
he was like,
sorry, all y'all white folks are here.
sorry. How about, he said I'm Irish, and I said,
I had a similar, go ahead. I already know I had the same thing happen, go ahead.
and I said, okay, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm American. When I walk into a room, do you think anyone goes, look at that American woman walking in the room, you know? Like, we're talking about how you're identified, how you're seen, and how people treat you based on how you're seen. When you walk into any room in any country, anywhere in the world, you are a white man. You're a little fat too. I know you've been working on it, work a little harder. But like, let's be honest here, you know, and I'm an Asian woman, and I'm petite, and you know, that's what, like, why can't, if I have to accept that, you know, all the time, people identify me as Asian. They don't say you're Chinese American. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's my bigger issue, is that when we're at the table and, you know, and we're talking about representation, I wish that it wasn't just asked of us. I wish that men were equally as responsible for represent women. As a man, when you're making a film, when you're telling a story, how do you approach your female characters? Who do you talk to? You know, and yeah, we should just all be responsible for representation which is about awareness of the world around us, and self-awareness.
Right. In making this film, it's deeply personal to you. Did you learn something more about yourself in the process of making it?
Yes, I learned everything. I mean, this film taught me that I actually can fight for specificity, and that specificity is what makes something universal. You know, as I was saying before, all my life I've compromised, and I almost didn't realize how much I was compromising or where I was compromising because I'd gotten so used to doing it. And when I decided I wasn't going to compromise and we were in the editing room, I actually had to like go back and think, all right, wait, what were the compromise decisions that I now want to go and undo?
Yeah.
You know, and I would forget because what's compromised and what's not, it gets all mixed up, and I would have to ask people that I really trust. And in developing the story, even writing the script, I would sometimes get notes, and I would take them all very seriously. And then I talked to a friend of mine, and she goes, "No, that makes total sense to me. You don't need to change that. They just don't get it because they haven't experienced that." And so suddenly I realized, wait a second. All these notes I'm getting, some of them are story notes, which, you know, maybe the writing isn't good, but maybe some of them are just cultural notes, because the people giving me notes haven't lived this experience, and so they need things explained to them. Now, am I making the story for them? Who am I making it for? You know, and so that's when I decided, you know what, I'm not explaining this to people who haven't lived this. I'm going to tell the story from my point of view, and for all of the people who have been in between worlds and been immigrants or been Chinese American. And, you know, and maybe that means I'll have a much more niche audience.
Yeah.
And then the film comes out, and then it goes worldwide, and everyone's responding, and people from all over the world of all different colors and are saying, that's my grandma, that's my family. Yeah. You know, I'm Italian, that is exactly, you know, my Nona. And I'm shocked, you know, and Chinese Asian people are in the cinema and they're like, this is so culturally specific. How do any of these other people understand this? Right. And they're shocked to hear people laughing who don't look like them. You know, and so that's been the learning experience for me, is we have to give credit to audiences. We have to have faith in humanity. You know, audiences are much smarter than we currently give them credit for, and this film taught me that.
Right. Billy, one last question.
Yes, baby.
One letter from a tough childhood growing up in Pittsburgh to
Yeah.
one letter away from an EGOT. How you feeling?
You know, it's good, it's great. You know, luckily, I have lived long enough. You know, I just turned 50 last month. You know, I've been in this business for 30 years. I'm an artist. It's not about the awards. With that said, I'm looking forward to my Oscar.
And we are too. Billy Porter, Lulu Wang, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Billy, Lulu, that was fabulous.